Now we will segue now to Alpha and Makati Place Incorporated. Who goes first? The chairman, Mr. Ongpin, yes.
Honorable members of the subcommittee, the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, good morning, sirs. First, I would sincerely like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to present our side and clarify the issue regarding Alphaland Makati Place project, a joint venture between Alphaland Corporation and the Boy Scouts of the Philippines. As I and Alphaland's President, Atty Mario Reta, have previously announced, and as we will further explain today, the Makati Place project is entirely above board and will make significant financial returns for the Boy Scouts of the Philippines. It would be helpful if I could explain to you the background of my professional relationship with Atty Oreta, especially as it relates to how I recruited him to become the president of Alphaland Corporation. I have known Babes since the early 1980s. He had an established law practice as well as a contracting and realty development firm. We have worked on several projects together, notably the Calabne Bay Resort in Cavite, formerly known as Marbella Marina Club, and Tagaytay Highlands, in addition, of course, to Alphaland Corporation. I have also been a client of his law firm in the past. Thus, in the year 2007, when the Ashmore Group of London, who were my partners at that time, asked me to set up a property development firm, now known as Alphaland Corporation, it was Babes who first came to my mind as the best person to lead Alphaland as president. Babes was the ideal president for Alphaland because not only was he a respected legal practitioner, he also had a proven track record in real property development. At that time, Babes was happy with his law practice and contracting business and was not particularly eager to join Alphaland. Thus, I had to incentivize him by agreeing to make him not only a salaried employee, but also a real partner in Alphaland by giving him a carried interest in the projects he would identify and close for Alphaland. Among the first projects that Babes delivered to Alphaland was the development of the Boy Scouts property in Malugay, Corner Yala Avenue Extension in Makati. For that project, I agreed to give Atty Oreta 5% as his carried interest in the project. Let me give you now an accurate yet brief background of the joint venture between the Boy Scouts and Alphaland. I think that too many slides and too many assertions have been made by certain individuals who simply do not understand what the transaction was all about. Even before Alphaland was formed in May of the year 2007, the two owners of the 1 hectare property in Malugay and Ayala Avenue agreed, this was sometime in the year 2005, that the value of the property should be split 60% to the Boy Scouts and 40% to Sime Darby. The entire property was appraised at 1 billion pesos. Thus, the value of the 60% of the Boy Scouts was 600 million pesos, and the value of the 40% share of Sime Darby was 400 million pesos. In June 2008, Alpha Land bought Sam Darby's interest in the property for the cash consideration of 400 million pesos. So from that point on, Alpha Land stepped into the shoes of Sam Darby as a 40% owner of the Malugay property. Subsequently, Alpha Land and the Boy Scouts, as the two owners of the entire Malugay property, entered into a joint venture agreement for the development of that entire property, of the 1 hectare property, into a mixed use, meaning residential and commercial facility. As will be explained in detail by Attorney Oreta later, that agreement was negotiated, finalized, and closed by Attorney Oreta for Alpha Land and by former Makati City Vice Mayor Ernesto Mercado for the Boy Scouts of the Philippines, as he was then the Senior Vice President and the Chairman of the Asset Management Committee of the Boy Scouts. As the project was originally envisioned, the total construction cost would be 4 billion pesos. If the cost of the land, meaning 1 billion pesos, were to be added, the total project cost would be 5 billion pesos. The total construction cost would be funded and provided entirely by Alpha Land. Not 1 cent would come from the Boy Scouts. Thus, the total construction cost of 5 billion, when you compare it with the 600 million valuation of the contribution of the Boy Scouts to the joint venture, in fact, would have only amounted to 12%, which is 600 million, the value of their contribution, and 5 billion, the value of the project. However, during the negotiations, skillful negotiations, which was conducted by Vice Mayor Mercado, in fact, the 12%, which the actual arithmetic computation of the joint venture, was increased. We agreed to increase it to 15%. To explain this a little bit more, had the sharing been adjusted in view of the new project cost, which is now 8 billion pesos, from 5 it has grown to 8 billion today, this sharing, or the 600 million contribution of the Boy Scouts would only amount to 7.5%. And yet, despite this, the 15% share of the Boy Scouts in the joint venture has not been changed, diminished, or reduced, as has been falsely alleged by Mr. Mercado. Let me now turn to why we state that the value of the 15% of the Boy Scouts is more than 3 billion. I realize, Mr. Chair, that Attorney Avisado of the Boy Scouts has said that it was 909 million. But may I point out that that number was as of August 2014. We are now in February 2015. We are going to finish this project by the end of this year. So the values I'm speaking about are the values when the project is finished. As in any joint venture, that's when you establish the sharing. So there is no conflict between the number that Attorney Avisado has stated, since it was of August last year, and our valuation, which is as of the time when the project is finished. The project consists of 5 floors of basement parking, 5 floors, a podium with 6 floors, and the 3 residential towers built on top of that podium. The basement parking of 5 floors has a capacity of a total of 1,000, actually it's a little bit more than 1,000 parking slots. Thus, the Boy Scouts' 15% share will equate to 150 parking slots. At today's market price, and we're actually selling it today, these parking slots, to potential residents of the towers. At today's market price of 1 million pesos, this portion of the Boy Scouts share would amount to 150 million just for the parking. For the podium, with a total gross floor area of 35,921 square meters, almost 36,000 square meters, the Boy Scouts have opted to have one entire floor for themselves. So the agreement was for the Boy Scouts to have the entire third floor, which measures 6,161 square feet, which actually, in fact, is more than 15%. It's closer to 17%. But we're nice guys at Alpha Land, so we agreed to give the Boy Scouts the entire third floor. This 6,161 square meters has been independently appraised at 200,000 per square meter. Thus, the total value of this 15% is 1,232,000,000 pesos. Coming now to the third and largest portion of the project, which are the 3 residential towers. Well, let me just point out, in the meantime, on this third floor, the one that has been delivered to the Boy Scouts, Alpha Land has been renting 1,061 square meters of this property of the Boy Scouts for 530,740 per month since January 2014. When this podium was finished. Since January of this year, Alpha Land rented another 206 square meters for 103,420 per month. So at the present, the total monthly rental that Alpha Land pays to the Boy Scouts is 634,160. That's a pretty substantial sum. 631 plus per month, 1,000 per month. So to be accused that, they've been fried in their own fat is just completely nonsense. Total nonsense. For the residential towers, the Boy Scouts is entitled to 9,200 square meters out of the total 61,300 square meters of saleable area. Alpha Land is now selling residential tower units at an average price of 200,000 pesos per square meter. Thus, the Boy Scout share of the 9,208 square meters in the 3 towers would be worth 183 billion pesos. These are, as I say, I just want to reiterate, this does not conflict with Attorney Wisdado's figures, which is as of last year. In fact, last year, our selling price was less than 200,000 per square meter. But as we finish the project, and the first 2 towers will be completed by the end of this year, we have been increasing the prices. And we have actually sold almost 40% of the project. So this is not no pie in the sky numbers. This is real. This is reality. That is why, Mr. Chairman, we state without any hesitation that the Makati Place project is one of the best investments ever made by the Boy Scouts. Alpha Land Corporation, as well as myself, and in our respective personal capacities, take the strongest exception to the allegations of Mr. Mercado that the Boy Scouts got a raw deal in this project. In fact, the opposite is true, as I have described and explained in detail. The Boy Scouts will be making, from the time they contributed the property in 2007, 2008 to today, their 600 million value which they contributed in the form of land is now worth 3 billion, or more than 3 billion, and which is more than 5 times the value of their contribution. This actually, if you compute it, it computes to a 20% return on investment, Mr. Chairman. It was actually, I think Mr. Mercado should be congratulated for having very skillfully negotiated a very good deal for the Boy Scouts. For the life of me, I simply cannot understand why all of these figures are being flashed on the screen. And quite frankly, they mean nothing. They're just numbers, and they're just assertions. These, I'm telling you what the facts are. Finally, Mr. Chairman, we repeat in the strongest possible terms that there was nothing irregular or underhanded in the Alpha Land Boy Scouts deal. Everything was and is above board, as the Boy Scouts executives or management have themselves said here today. And both Alpha Land and the Boy Scouts will be making a lot of money because of this transaction. Let me repeat, the Boy Scouts had no risk. They contributed 600 million. We funded everything. And their investment is now worth 5 times 600 million. That's a 26% return on investment per annum. That, in any way you look at it, that's a great return. And therefore, I feel that Mr. Mercado should be congratulated for having negotiated such a fabulous deal for the Boy Scouts. It is for this reason, Mr. Chairman, that Alpha Land Corporation filed a 100 million peso damage suit against Mr. Mercado. And I would like to inform this honorable subcommittee that last Wednesday, which was February 11, 2015, as soon as I came back from my overseas trip, I and Attorney Oreta personally signed and swore to a criminal complaint for libel against Mr. Mercado, which has been filed with the Makati City Prosecutor's Office. And I would like to inform this honorable chamber here today that we will pursue this case. We will aggressively pursue this case. No one, it just simply is not right for an individual who has an axe to grind to put up slides and make certain assertions which are totally meaningless and totally false. Simply is not right. Thank you once again, honorable members of the Senate Subcommittee, and with your indulgence, may I now request that Mr. Oreta be allowed to proceed with his own opening statement.
Before we recognize Attorney Oreta, Senator Trillanes would like to address Mr. Ongpin.
Mr. Ongpin, we would have to warn you about issuing threats against resource persons, uh, because it may affect actually his ability to testify, and you will have to deal with that in the courts. Okay. Now,
Mr. Your Honor,
yes,
may I just respond? It is not a threat. We have already filed
yes,
the damage
yes.
suits, and we have filed the criminal complaint. It is not a threat.
Yes, and you have every right to pursue that. But as resource persons, we will not allow you to do that. And the Senate, as an institution, also will do its very best to protect its witnesses. So now, let me just say, well, for the record, for the public, that for the investors and the potential investors of this Alpha Land project, not to be affected by anything that goes on with these proceedings, because we're just here not to question the integrity of the project per se, but the interests of the Boy Scouts. We'll just have to make sure that they were not shortchanged, and for the public officials involved in this project to be accountable. That is the intention of this hearing, Mr. Ongpin. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Trillanes. Mr. Ongpin, you use the present tense. The value of the investment of the Boy Scouts is more than 3 billion. But actually, that is will be, di ba? At the end of the project. That's that. I think that
Actually, Mr. Chair,
that's a projection, right?
well, it is now virtually complete. Towers 1 and 2, we are delivering it by the end of the year. Tower 3 will be starting. In the
No,
next
but
couple-
you said earlier that that's how you really fix the share of in a joint venture. At the end of the joint venture, that's when
That's
you
how
fix
you.
the...
That's when you calculate what
Actuals.
the actual values are, Your Honor. But may I just point out that as time goes on and as the project is completed, in fact, even the numbers, the values per square meter that are used, which are today's values, actually increase. Because as the project is completed, you're able to deliver a finished product, no longer pre-selling it. Thank you, Your Honor.
And you've mentioned that you've sold around 40% of the disposable area
Yes, Your Honor.
Of-
For Towers 1 and 2.
Towers 1 and 2. But you have not remitted a single cent to the BSP as their share. For the
Ac-
record,
Yes, actually, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, the agreement that we have with the Boy Scouts is they tell us whether they want it in kind, as they have told us for the podium, they wanted the third floor, which equates to, as I say, more than 15%. But we have agreed to that. And we have regular meetings with them, and I think they very smartly have decided, let's wait until we see what the project values are. Because if we deliver it to them now, it could be valued less. So 200,000 pesos today is the selling price. But as we finish it, we keep increasing prices every month.
well, anyway, I will review your answer because I don't quite get your answer because you've been selling, you have cash flow already, but there's no agreement now to remit their cash counterpart for the Boy Scouts.
As I mentioned, Your
Because
Honor,
pagdating po sa podium, they chose a floor. Okay, clear.
tapos na ho.
Okay yan po yun. Okay yan po yun. But how about the units to be disposed? Are they the ones supposed to sell the units that they are there to dispose?
Mr. Chairman, good morning. May I answer that question? Sir.
Gips, baka in the course of your statement, masagot mo na lang yon. Or,
No, just
Ah,
to
sige,
the point.
para-
Just to that point,
Okay,
Mr.
sige
Chairman.
po.
Kasi under the joint venture agreement that we signed, the parties shall mutually agree on the method of allocating the individual units. Ang usapan po rito, hindi ho yung money sum. We are talking about 15% of individual units that they will choose. Eh hanggang ngayon ho, nag-uusap kami, hindi pa nagde-decide ang Boy Scouts on what particular units they would like to take hold of. Kaya wala pa ho talaga ano. Kung if they choose the units that we have sold so far, then we will remit. So it's not the bottom line 15% of whatever is earned. It is 15% of the total project. That is what is agreed upon.
Okay, yun, I understand. So you have begun to sell even without clarifying whether that is your unit or the Boy Scouts unit.
Yes, sir. Nag-uusap po kami. Nagmi-meeting kami.
Yeah, and the cash that you generate stays with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So interest income, potential interest income to be earned by the BSP, they could not earn it in the meantime.
No, but that will be accounted for.
So when they choose a unit which has been sold on a certain date, then when you remit the amount, you will put interest income?
If there is an interest income, we will consider that, Your Honor.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just to
Senator
clarify, just on that point, Atty. Oreta, not to interrupt, and Mr. Oreta, can you state it clearly when you say nag-uusap kami? Is it the executive director? Is it the president, vice president? May dokumento ba to? Because supposedly any action by the Boy Scouts will be through its president and then through its board. So when you say nag-uusap kami, sinong pipili? Sino pong kausap nyo?
Your Honor, ang kausap po namin dyan is a committee of the Boy Scouts. Because under our agreement, they were supposed to create a committee. We Alpha Land and Boy Scouts will create a committee so that we can decide on moving forward on what to do with the project. So we've met with them several times, maybe 4 or 5 times.
Can you name them, sir? So just so that when we ask questions later on, it will be clear to us. And then we will ask them later on for the minutes and everything so that it will be very clear. I'm asking Mr. Oreta, kasi kayo kausap. Sila muna sumagot, Mr. Abisado. No? So sino ho kausap nyo specifically?
Ang head ho nung committee na kausap ko is Mr. Abisado.
Then who are the members?
And
sir?
then si Enrique Lagdameo is one of them. I think si Governor ng Bulacan.
So, sir, from now on, when you say that you were talking to the Boy Scouts, you're referring to the committee?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just for
Yes, sir.
clarity.
Yes,
Just for
sir.
Former governor siguro?
Si Obet Pagdanganan.
And then when the committee makes a decision, is it in writing? Will it be in writing according to your setup? Verbal? In writing? Atty. Abisado.
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, the management committee representing the Boy Scouts of the Philippines is chaired by former governor and past president of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines, Obet Pagdanganan. And the members are past President Max Idrelin Jr., former Congressman Jun Anyag, the National Treasurer, Mr. Riquit Raglameo, and myself. So we meet every now and then concerning the development of the project. And whatever it is that we will have to agree on, the committee reports it to the National Executive Board. And therefore, up to now, we're still in the process precisely of identifying which part of the 3 towers would now really be allocated, because that will have to be covered by a deed of conveyance in favor of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines, Mr. Chairman.
Let me acknowledge Senator Sani Angara and of course Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, who came in earlier. Before we go to Atty. Oreta's opening statement, one more question for Mr. Ongpin. In your opening statement, sir, you mentioned a carrying interest. What is the in favor of Mr. Oreta? What is the relevance of that concept to our proceedings, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's carried interest. That's
Carried interest.
Carried interest.
What is
Which
that, and
means-
why is it important in our proceeding?
It's important because referred to by Mr. Mercado, he blissfully assumes that the 5% that I gave to Mr. Oreta was given or delivered by Mr. Oreta to the Vice President, which is completely nonsense. Carried interest means that Mr. Oreta has a carry means he doesn't have to pay for it. We spend for it, but he has that carried interest because he has worked diligently on the project.
So 5% of what?
5% of the project, Your Honor.
And is that the reason why Boy Scouts got 15%? Is that related or not related?
It's not at all related, Your Honor. As I explained, the 15% of the Boy Scouts was based on the 600 million peso value of their contribution to the joint venture, vis-a-vis our contribution of 40% plus the commitment to fund the entire project, therefore amounting to 5 billion pesos. If you divide their 600 million contribution by the total project value, which we are funding, their 15%, their 600 million equates to, in fact, 12% only. But we have agreed through skillful negotiations of Mr. Mercado to make it 15%. So it's unrelated, Your Honor.
Since you raised it, I thought it was related. That's why I'm asking these clarificatory questions.
I raise it only, sir, because of the assertion, unfounded and baseless assertion, that this 5%, which is an agreement between...
But I never heard Vice Mayor Mercado say that he was aware that Mr. Oreta had a carried interest of 5%. Did you ever mention that, Vice Mayor Mercado? Oh, wala eh. So that's why I pursued that matter.
Mr. Chairman, actually, I've been through the minutes of the meetings of this committee. In fact, Mr. Mercado averred that it should have been 20%, but the 5% went to Mr. Oreta and therefore to the Vice President. It's in the minutes. Explain to you the background of my professional relationship with Atty Oreta, especially as it relates to how I recruited him to become the president of Alpha Land Corporation. I have known Babes since the early 1980s. He had an established law practice as well as a contracting and realty development firm. We have worked on several projects together, notably the Calabne Bay Resort in Cavite, formerly known as Marbella Marina Club, and Tagaytay Highlands. In addition, of course, to Alpha Land Corporation. I have also been a client of his law firm in the past. Thus, in the year 2007, when the Ashmore Group of London, who were my partners at that time, asked me to set up a property development firm, now known as Alpha Land Corporation. It was Babes who first that the value of the property should be split 60% to the Boy Scouts and 40% to Sime Darby. The entire property was appraised at 1 billion pesos. Thus, the value of the 60% of the Boy Scouts was 600 million pesos, and the value of the 40% share of Sime Darby was 400 million pesos. In June 2008, Alpha Land bought Sime Darby's interest in the property for the cash consideration of 400 million pesos. So from that point on, Alpha Land stepped into the shoes of Sime Darby as the 40% owner of the Malugay property. Subsequently, Alpha Land and the Boy Scouts, as the two owners of the entire, came to my mind as the best person to lead Alpha Land as president. Babes was the ideal president for Alpha Land because not only was he a respected legal practitioner, he also had a proven track record in real property development. At that time, Bates was happy with his law practice and contracting business and was not particularly eager to join Alpha Land. Thus, I had to incentivize him by agreeing to make him not only a salaried employee, but also a real partner in Alpha Land by giving him a carried interest in the projects he would identify and close for Alpha Land. Among the first projects that Babes delivered to Alpha Land was the development of the Boy Scouts property in Malugay Corner Yala Avenue Extension in Makati. For that project, I agreed to give Attorney Oreta 5% as his carried interest in the project. Let me give you now an accurate yet brief background of the joint venture between the Boy Scouts and Alpha Land. I think that too many slides and too many assertions have been made by certain individuals who simply do not understand what the transaction was all about. Even before Alpha Land was formed in May of the year 2007, the two owners of the 1 hectare property in Malugay and Ayala Avenue agreed. This was sometime in the year 2005.
Now we will segue now to Alpha and Makati Place Incorporated. Who goes first? The chairman, Mr. Ongpin, yes.
Honorable members of the subcommittee, the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, good morning, sirs. First, I would sincerely like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to present our side and clarify the issue regarding Alpha Land Makati Place project, a joint venture between Alpha Land Corporation and the Boy Scouts of the Philippines. As I and Alpha Land's President, Attorney Mario Reta, have previously announced, and as we will further explain today, the Makati Place project is entirely above board and will make significant financial returns for the Boy Scouts of the Philippines. It would be helpful if I could